Hello and welcome to another tutorial video. In this video I'm going over another writing exercise 4, Sensory Details in Writing, Sight. This is the first of a mini-series that I'm doing to go over all of the 5 senses and to show some creative ways that writers can use the 5 senses in their own writing. But first, I'm going to go over what sensory details are. Sensory details are descriptions that uses the 5 senses, sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch to add depth in writing and evoke readers' imagination. Sight is the main and easiest sense for both beginner and more seasoned writers to write, and oftentimes writers neglect the other 4 senses in their writing because of this. But there are some key points that can help with this issue. And the first is to practice writing each of the 5 senses individually. It's kind of like a blind person, how even though they may lose their sense of sight, many of their other senses become stronger through the process. So it really can be helpful to actually practice writing the sense of sight individually, the sense of smell individually, and so on, to strengthen each one of the 5 senses in your writing. The next key point is to pay attention to your surroundings and your own senses, and use them to your advantage by considering some of the following questions. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? And what do you touch? Although we fiction writers write fiction, we base a lot of our descriptions from the real world, and it can be helpful to use your observations from reality and applying it to your fiction. And finally, the last key point is to utilize literary devices to describe how something looks, tastes, smells, feels, or resembles. There are many different types of literary devices, which I intend to go over later in future videos, but first I'm going to go over some words that indicate sight. Below here I have a chart of words that indicate sight. The first is for color. You can use words like a paintbrush to describe the colors of things and objects. You can use single colors, or you can combine 2 colors or more, or you can use literary devices such as similes and metaphors to add color to your writing. Below here I just have a little example of my character Jessica describing her eyes. Her copper brown eyes were like 2 new shiny pennies. As you can see here, I describe the color of her eyes and make a simile describing them and making the comparison to 2 new shiny pennies. And the next column is shape. For shape, you can describe the shape of objects. Are they in the shape of a square, circle, rectangle, star, or maybe a crescent? There are various different types of shapes, not just the basic shapes. So, for example, you can describe something in the shape of a raindrop. Below here, I just have an example of my character Andre describing his birthmark, which is from my debut novel, Eva's Promise. A large birthmark blemished his left bicep. It was shaped like the continent of Africa. And the third column is size. Size is obviously how big or small something is, but it also can be how thin, wide, long, short, or thick something is. Below here I just have an example describing Eva from my debut novel, Eva's Promise. Eva had always been as thin as olive oil since she was a small child. Here I make this comparison of Eva to olive oil from the cartoon Popeyes because Eva is a slender type of person, so that's why I made that comparison to the cartoon character of olive oil. And finally, in the last column is appearance. Appearance can actually include all of these other three, color, shape, and size, when you're describing the entire appearance of something. It can be how something looks directly or how it seems to look. And you can also compare something to something else by using imagery or symbolism, as I did in the example below of my character Caleb, describing him and making the comparison of his complexion and clothing to that of a Tootsie Roll. His smooth, dark brown skin and clothing made the thought of a Tootsie Roll come to Eva's mind. This little bit here might not make sense to you why I made this comparison, but if you were to read all of the rest of the passage describing him, it would really make sense to you even more if you were to Google a Tootsie Roll, for example. But all of these are just some simple examples of how you can describe the sense of sight within your fiction. In the next video, I'll be going over the sense of smell, which many writers struggle with, but there are two specific things that I'm going to distinguish later in that video that I think will really be helpful to writers when using the sense of smell in their writing. That's all I have for this video. I hope it was helpful, and thank you for watching.